Hey, GLP-1 plus size community. Before we jump into the podcast, please take the time to leave us a 5-star review on whatever audio platform you're listening to the podcast on. Share your story and how the podcast has helped you. This will help us get referred up in the audio platform so that we can reach more people that need our help, our support, and guidance from our doctors. Help us get loud and change things. Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault. Welcome to the Plus Sides Podcast. Hey, how you doing, Kat?
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi. Look at our special guest host we have today. Amanda.
Thank you for having me.
We're so glad to have you. Such an important discussion, and so glad to have you with us today. Yay!
I'm really excited.
And currently, Kim and I are in a monsoon, so hopefully we're going to keep everything together.
The wind is bananas. I know. Yeah.
I feel like we're in the rainy season, so.
We'll do our intros. If you're not new here, this is your cue to fast forward. Or all of our new people that come in all the time. I'm Kim. This is the Plus Sides Podcast, Cracking the Obesity Code, where we talk about everything metabolic disorder related, whether that's the new GLP-1 medications, the mental changes that you have to go or you're going to go through with this, the mindset that you have to have, everything, the nutrition, the movement, all the things that are included. And now even kind of breaking into a bigger problem, especially since we've met our friend Amanda from GLP-1 Collective. And I think that what would be cool is if I just kind of tell you really quickly, and this is sort of like off the cuff, like for me in general, I've been on these medications for almost 3 years. I've had obesity for as long as I can remember. My first diet was when I was 8. I've always been trying to control the size of my body and been on diets for as long as I can remember. And it's completely shaped me and also driven me since I took a GLP-1 medication to realize that this is a disease and that it deserves treatment and support and care and all the things. And I was very upset with how bad our medical system is, frankly. And so I've become an advocate and have created this podcast with Kat. And that's what we talk about here. And we have community guests on, doctors, etc. So we're so glad to have you with us. I've lost 100 pounds, but honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I know that sounds crazy because it's all I could think about in the beginning was the scale and the before and afters, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't. It's about how I feel, how I move my body throughout this world, and how I help others. So I'm so glad to have you here. Such a good episode. Okay. Kat, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm a Libra. Ha ha. I've been doing that stupid joke forever. Hi, I'm Kat Carter. We, I have leveraged a GLP-1 for the last couple of years. I think I'm officially now at like 85 pounds lost.
Wow.
I sat at this and like Kim, I was so anxious to at first watching the pounds and keeping everything secret, not telling anybody because I was ashamed to use it because we're still under that notion of eat less and move more. But to piggyback on Kim, it has been a lot of weight between the ears that has been worked on a treadmill, doing some heavy lifting in here. That's been a process. So doing this work has definitely been quite a process. And I think that if you are just starting your journey on a GLP-1, prepare. It is an adventure.
Indeed.
And
Gosh.
welcome to the fold.
Welcome to the fold. Welcome to the chaos. Also, you're going to get whiplash from the news in this space. Just get ready. Just get ready. Like get insurance.
So
We're so
true.
glad to have you. I really want to ease into Amanda and have her tell us a little bit about herself and the GLP-1 Collective and what they do, and then maybe how this interview that we're about to have came about, and then we'll ease into the story from there. How's that sound?
Awesome. Thank you again so much for having me. I just finished listening to another one of your episodes this morning that I loved. And in the episode, you had mentioned who our special guest is today. So um, I can't wait to hear all about them and get to know everything that I can. I started my journey in October, last week of October. I just started looking into this medication and I saw that the FDA had taken compound tirzepatide off of the shortage list, and the community was reeling and using research grade and going to the black market and stockpiling a year's supply and just losing their minds. And this is when I had just started my own journey. And I'm like, what am I getting myself into? And oh
Yep.
my gosh, this
Mhm.
medication has clearly changed so many people's lives. If they are this desperate to stay on it, there must be something to
Yes.
it. So I started my own journey, um, got my first prescription for this medication, and in that same week, started a petition to fight for affordable access to GLP-1s. I'd been looking around, and you were one of the very first and largest advocates that I could find on the internet, and I just couldn't see any organizations that were fighting for affordable access. And I knew it was coming. I knew this medication was going to come off of the list, the shortage list eventually, and these people would be right back where they started. So I was like, all right, we've got to do something. From there, we launched a podcast. And then in January of 2025, we incorporated a nonprofit to fight for affordable access to GLP-1s, with the hopes that we would eventually be able to help people pay for their medications until, advocacy takes time and people don't have time to wait.
Yeah.
Obesity takes lives and people have been cut off. They're already cut off. People have insurance dropping them or their insurance never covered it to begin with. And they're scared. And truly, our lives are all timed anyway.
Yeah.
But lives are potentially shortened every day or lost because of the disease of obesity. So it's a cause worth fighting for. And I am so glad that our paths crossed.
Me too.
I want to say like 2 months into our nonprofit, I was contacted by i-MAK, the Institute of Medicine's Access and Knowledge. It was Join Strategies. It was a video producer who was working with i-MAK who needed help reaching out to other GLP-1 members, like from within the community, who would be willing to share their stories of having issues with affordable access to GLP-1s. And immediately I was like, yes, let me help you. Let me connect people with you. So um, amazingly, the community came together and we were able to get a handful of interviews from people who had issues with access. And then after that, I wrote a blog post about the things that they've been doing and how we were so incredibly grateful to be able to help them connect with people. But they've done so much in the medical space for the pricing of medicine and helping bring down that pricing and call out what should be called out in order to make that happen with a lot of other medicines too. So, like I said, I am incredibly honored to be here and I am so excited to hear everything I can from our guest.
Yes, let's learn all
Yes,
about it.
indeed.
I think we said we're going to bring in our guest. I think that was a good stopping
I
point.
think, yeah, we were right at that point.
All right, ready?
Yes.
All right. Welcome. How are you? Oh, you're on mute. Let me unmute you. Hold on. See, even he's muted.
No, probably. Well, let's see if I can.
Hi.
There we
got
go.
Hi there.
Hello.
Nice to be here with you.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
We're so
It's an
glad to
honor
have
to
you.
be amongst you all.
Yes. I'm sorry for the weather.
Not at
It may
all.
be a little bumpy. I guess you don't have any problems in New York right now, huh?
No, at the moment it's pretty grey, but we don't have
That's nice.
storms. So,
That's good.
Yeah.
yeah. No,
All
it's
right.
humid. It's humid.
Oh yeah.
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 Well, the
It's
human.
weird here. Just came out of nowhere, these storms. That's how it is in the summer, though, in Atlanta and Georgia in general. Okay. Enough of wasting time. Sorry. Let's get started. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you help people.
Yeah, my name's Tahir Amin. I am a co-founder and CEO of an organization called the Initiative for Medicine's Access and Knowledge, HIVE, also an acronym i-MAK. Nothing to do with the Apple computer, just in case I get confused. We get asked that question all the time. I am an attorney. I originally grew up in the United Kingdom, and I trained as a lawyer in the UK, and I worked in an area which I'm sure we're going to discuss more about today, and how it impacts the prices of medicines. It's an area that is called intellectual property, which, if you've
Right.
heard about it or not heard about it, usually it covers things like trademarks, things, the branding that you see on your products, patents, so things that are invented, ideas that are invented and made into products. It can be designs, it could be copyright, you write a book, or the music that you listen to. It all falls under this intangible property right called intellectual property. So I practiced in the commercial side for about good 10, 12 years. And then I actually left the private practice because I got a bit disillusioned with it and the direction of how corporations and the law kind of moves, and how it actually doesn't work in the favor of most of the public, but for the wealthy and the powerful. And I actually moved to India, and it was at that time that when I moved into India, there was a HIV epidemic, in the global HIV epidemic. It was early 2000s,
Yeah.
and many people in Africa and around the world couldn't afford the prices of the HIV medicines at the time. I think they were charged around $10,000 to $12,000,
Oh my gosh.
and people were dying, and it was, if anyone remembers that period, it was
Yeah.
probably one of the biggest health crises. And so I got involved in the work there because I thought, how can I use my legal skills to actually prevent sort of people, at least help people to try and get the access to the medicines they need. Now, India was a supplier of a lot of generic medicines to
Mhm.
Africa at that time. And but because of new laws, new intellectual property laws, which had been created that they previously didn't have to have, were now imposed upon them. And so that was going to cut off the generic supply to
My gosh.
Africa and other countries. And so I and many others, we started taking on what we call these patents that companies get that block other providers making cheaper versions.
Mhm.
And we were successful in we challenged these patents using our legal skills,
Mhm.
and we were able to keep these medications available in generic form, so that instead of paying $10,000, they were still $200, $300, which the generics were making them available for.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got into this field. And 20 years on nearly, we co-founded i-MAK in about 2006, and we've worked in over 50 countries looking at these issues. And in the last 10 years, we've really focused on the United States. We were invited by a funder to say, we've got issues here in the drug pricing, and
Yeah.
that's how we've come to sort of focus on our work. And what we really do is we do a lot of research to help unpack and bring transparency around a lot of the practices that the big pharmaceutical companies are sort of using to lengthen their monopolies, keep drug prices high, and prevent generics from getting in, so that you can have more affordable versions. And so a lot of our work has actually helped to educate Congress. They're starting to see this as an issue now, stuff that they never were aware of before. And in return, we get a lot of flack from the pharmaceutical industry,
I bet.
because they see us. What we're doing is we're unveiling the very things that they don't want unveiled.
Yeah.
And that's how power works. There's a term, an economic term called information asymmetry, is that basically those who have access to the information and the knowledge, the ones that hold the power, because people they can't see it.
Yes.
And that asymmetry is what we're trying to break, so that basically you can't make policy if you don't know what's happening. And a lot of people, unfortunately, in Congress, put aside all the lobbying and everything that happens, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the information. They get told by companies week in, week out that this is what's best for Americans.
Yeah.
And they buy into that. And what we're trying to do is break some of that power hold so that we're actually offering something, a different narrative, a different way to kind of look at, actually, that's not what's happening. This is what's happening. This is what companies are doing. This is what they're doing that is actually impacting Americans. This is why your drug prices are twice as high as or 3 times as high even as they are in other parts of the world. And so really sort of changing all the various sort of narratives that the industry has kept putting out there, and people have actually, whether they've accepted or not, they've just said, okay, well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into this. Long story short.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's always hard to explain how you into this kind of work. I think that was really interesting and a really nice parallels to talk about other, I think, health crises, right? And how this is falling in line with that. I think that one of the biggest questions that I feel like everybody's right now is, with all of those legal skills, that you have, why are these drugs so expensive in our country and not in the rest of the world?
So I think one of the key things is I think there are a couple of factors. It's not just intellectual property. I want to be clear about that, but it is a big factor. I think one is in a lot of other countries, like I'm from the United Kingdom. If you just take Europe generally, if we're trying to make an equivalent in terms of economic sort of equivalence, countries there, they negotiate their drug prices. So they have government bodies that actually negotiate with companies and saying, we're not going to actually pay that price. What they'll do is they'll say, well, actually, we don't think this drug is actually offering any more of therapeutic benefit than the last drug. So we're not going to pay $10,000 more, or whatever it is that the companies are asking. Now, that can also hit problems, because then sometimes the newer version of a drug, or a newer version of a drug, may not come to market because the government negotiation body say, well, we're not going to pay that, and so the company resists, and so you're in this kind of stalemate. But the thing is at least having that negotiation power, it actually at least brings the prices down. So we've seen there's various studies out there that show that most of Europe, for example, the Western Europe, almost the prices are 3 times lower than what they are in the United States. And only recently, after the Inflation Reduction Act, did that possibility for governments negotiating. So now, as Center for Medicaid actually now negotiates, Medicare now negotiates on certain drugs. So there is that possibility now, but that's a really sort of well delayed when you think about how the rest of the world has moved for a long time. And so the problem in the United States, first of all, is this idea, which we think is a great idea, this idea of a free market. What that means for the pharmaceutical companies is they can charge whatever price they like.
Indeed.
And whatever the market will bear. And that means usually those who can pay get it, or those who have insurance might get it.
Right. And
the rest, you're left to fend for yourselves. And that is not a free market to me. That's not helping Americans. And then on top of that, what you then have is, this is the area that we focus on, is you have companies will use every tactic they can to prolong the monopoly on the drug. And this is where the intellectual property comes in. This is where patents come in.
Okay.
So, for example, and I don't know if you want me to go into a little bit of detail here.
Let's do it. Yes, we do. We want to hear all. We want to hear it all.
Our people like it.
Right. So, I'm going to give a quick snapshot of how drug discovery works, for example.
Great.
So a company will be working in the lab. They'll have a number of compounds or whatever. If I'm just going to use this broader term, because there's biologic drugs and there's chemical-based drugs. And what they'll do is eventually, sort of, once they find, as they're doing their research, they'll start patenting different aspects of the compound. And so that's the first underlying there's usually what we call a main patent that goes into a drug product. And that main patent is usually what what then basically is used as the basis for the product, and then you get 20 years of protection as a patent filer. So from the date of filing, the rule is now you get 20 years. Now, of course, during that 20 years, some of those years are spent developing and researching clinical trials, all that other stuff. And there's no guarantee that the product's going to get to market. There's no guarantee that the FDA is going to approve it. But let's just say a drug is approved, like a GLP, maybe there's still 10 years or 8 years left of that patent. So maybe 10, anywhere between 8 to 12 years has gone on research and development. So they haven't made any money per se at that point because it's been in development stage. Then they've got 8 years. And so that was the bargain. That's the social contract of the patent system. What they also get is once they get the drug approved, they get a separate exclusivity from the FDA. So a lot of people don't talk about this. They get a separate exclusivity that runs in parallel with the patent, which is what we call a market exclusivity. So when you bring a new drug to market, you get in the chemical compound space, you get 5 years of market exclusivity. That means nobody else can sell in that first 5 years. Nobody. No, you can't even challenge it legally, nothing. So that's a pure monopoly that a company has on their product. So in the case of Novo Nordisk or Eli Lilly with sort of Mounjaro, zepbound, in that first 5 years, nobody can come into the marketplace. They've got a pure monopoly. And so that's where they make a lot of their money back. And then you've got the patents on top of that. So you've got the 8 years, whatever it is that's remaining of the main patent.
Yeah.
So that's running in parallel. So what they've got is they've got these are all called incentives to develop drugs.
Okay. I mean, I can see the incentive, obviously, right? Yeah.
It makes sense, right? You need some incentive.
Yeah.
So then what's happened is, so you think after that 20 years of patent life and that 5 years that's running in parallel, that's it, game over. No. What's happened is companies have learned how to tack on other patents because they say, well, it's not just that one patent that makes a drug. I've got to formulate it. I've got to do all this. There's a process to manufacture. So what they do, they start stacking on these overlaying patents.
Okay.
They develop what we call in the legal world, it's a thicket of patents. So what you do is, and I used to do this as a lawyer, you build a fortress around your drug of patents so that any competitor who's going to try and get in finds it almost impenetrable. So what that means is they can keep the market to themselves for as long as possible. And the reason they do that is because, unfortunately, we live in a world today where the business model is driven by something that people call, in the academic world, they call it financialization. To simplify, what that means is the financial business model that the Wall Streets and whatever use is what's driving our health system, our pharmaceutical system. It's all about profit. It's all about how much you can maximize your revenue so that you can show your quarterly earnings for your shareholders, your investors, how much money you're making. And I, as a CEO of a company, I have to find all sorts of different ways I can maintain that revenue growth.
Yeah.
And one of the ways of doing that, one of the biggest ways to do that is hanging on to your monopoly, because you can charge whatever price you want because you've got no competitor.
True. Okay.
Is this evergreening?
So this is in the legal nomenclature, people call it evergreening of the patent. So you have your one patent and you evergreen it into many different ones so that it never goes off patent. It does go off patent, but what you use is you use all these patents to sometimes get a settlement with a competitor. So if I'm, for example, what's happening now, let's say if we take Ozempic, wegovy, and even Rybelsus, apparently there's a settlement that's happened on the main patent on the products.
Yeah.
But we're not going to see those potential generics enter until 2032.
Why?
But so the way you're explaining it with with the years on patent, by the time we get to 2032, would there be another patent? Is it built in such a way where they can continue?
So to kind of get into the murky strategies that they use. So, for example, let me just put with the initial patent. So, the initial patent, if I use a live example, which is something Amanda may be familiar with because of the report that we recently came out with in April, which is how we got in touch, I believe, Amanda. So, Wegovy, Ozempic, and Rybelsus, they are made with a particular active ingredient. I'm using these terms. Active ingredient is the compound. It's called
Right.
semaglutide. You'll see that on your packet, semaglutide.
Yep.
It's the same drug. They're 3 different branded products. It's the same underlying active ingredient. What they've done is they've cleverly branded it out in different ways, using different dosing and different what have you. That patent, the main patent on those 3 products, this underlying main patent, technically, if you take it from that first filing, which was in 2006, should end in 2026. But it should end in 26. But in the 1980s, Congress passed a law called Hatch-Waxman, because in the 80s, the pharmaceutical companies lobbied and said, we don't get enough years of patent protected market exclusivity, meaning by the time we've done our research, we only have X number of years left on that patent. And so Congress, in its wisdom, said, okay, well, we'll guarantee you an extra 5 years so that you at least get 14 years of actual patent exclusivity. And on top of the other market exclusivity that they get from the FDA, which is a new thing that added in the 80s. So they are guaranteed 14 years of patent exclusivity. And then what they do is they add on all the other evergreening patents on top. So that instead of having just 14 years, they might get 16 years, 17 years, 18 years, or 19 years, unless somebody has to litigate it. And when they litigate it, they end up settling because they can't litigate all the hundreds of patents that they've developed.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And what is that law called again?
Hatch-Waxman Act.
Wow, okay.
1984. And so it was actually, there was something beneficial about that act because it was the time, because back in the day, generics had to do their own clinical trials. This act made it possible that generics could actually just use the data from the originator company, the brand, the first one that brings the product. And then they could actually, instead of doing all these costly trials, they could just do what's called a bioequivalent. And so that was the good side of the law. The bad side is that what was traded away was all these other incentives that the companies got back, because they felt that they were losing their kind of stronghold on the market. So Congress had to do this delicate dance to give something back. And in a way now, when we look at these blockbuster drugs, like, for example, Novo Nordisk, that extra 5 years I was talking about, that patent extension that they get because of Hatch-Waxman. Yeah. By our estimates, they're going to make 166 billion in revenue just on that 5 years. Just on that 5 years. So Congress has given. They probably didn't know that back in the day.
Yeah.
But they've given, because of the nature of this product, $166 billion to this company. And that's what it doesn't end there, because they've spun out Wegovy, the same underlying active ingredient, into a different product with a different dosage. And so that, we don't know when that's going to have generics, probably 234, 235.
Oh my gosh.
So they use, and then what Novo Nordisk now is they're using this semaglutide, this underlying product, so they're going to combine it, and they're going to have CagriSema, which is all in pipeline product.
Yeah.
So what they do is they keep mixing it up, and this is what the evergreening, as you say, Amanda, to prolong the monopoly. And so basically, the next generation of drugs will be, all these patenting strategies will be around them.
Wow.
And I heard like there had been, like, whenever they get approved for a new indication, they can extend the patent too, right?
Exactly. It's a great point, Kim, because I'm glad you raised that. So I don't know I know I've spoken to a lot of people about this issue. When I say, for example, if I have a drug like, let's say, semaglutide, it was initially for diabetes. And then they found it for weight loss. They get a separate patent for weight loss.
Oh my God.
Even though it was a kind of almost like a side effect of using it, that they realized it, but they get a separate patent. So any new indication, you get a separate patent.
A separate patent.
Yeah.
This starts to explain like all of the drug companies going after the compounds. And then a couple years ago, going after doctors for
Oh yeah.
prescribing it off label. Like,
Insurance
wow.
Exactly.
companies like they were sending, like, we've been here since the beginning, right? So like insurance companies were like, you shouldn't prescribe these medications off label, or we're going to come for your license. And doctors are like, what are you kidding
No.
me? Like 1 in 3 medications is written off label. What are you kidding me? You know?
There's an amazing thing about that. So this is again about breaking myths and narratives.
Yeah.
Pharmaceutical industries will say, well, we did all this research to find a new indication. Don't
Yeah.
you want the new indication? They'll use this as their argument.
Yeah.
Half the time it's doctors who try it out and then they go and patent it.
What? So like the doctors tried it, they wrote it off label, and then like what
They
reported?
wrote off label and they hear about it, and the companies go, "Oh, but that's a good idea. I will go
Oh
and patent
my
it."
God.
Wow.
And, they
Wow.
like to claim that they were doing all this hard work in the lab. I'm not saying everything's like that, but there are
No,
instances.
I get it. Yeah. Wow.
Well, and like they've also clearly known, right, that this class of medicine causes weight loss for a long way, because the class has been around quite a while, right? It has caused weight loss. I mean, I think small amounts, like with liraglutide, for example, but it's not like they didn't know. So I feel like they've just been teeing this up, right, for years now. Like they knew exactly what they were going to do. I have said that since the beginning, because I am completely fascinated with Eli Lilly's marketing, just because my background's in marketing and I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
Their go-to-market strategies they always are. I mean, like they're 5 steps ahead, and it makes sense. They've been planning this for years.
Oh, I mean, having worked in the corporate side, what you do is you have a strategy that's running 10 years ahead of time.
Yeah, for sure, at least.
Oh, yeah.
You're ready to flip out a product, call it obsolescence, whatever you want to call it, moving the patients over to the next version. I mean, take a drug like Keytruda, for example, which is a cancer drug, which is one of the best-selling drugs at the moment. I think the GLPs are going to surpass it, which is quite surprising. Yeah, no. I mean, we in our report, which I hope you will share with your viewers or listeners, the GLPs are going to have earned more in their first 5 years than even Keytruda will, Keytruda was the best-selling drug, but Merck is just about to switch it to what we call, now when you take the cancer drug now, Keytruda, you take it in IV form, like it's transfusion.
Wow.
Then now they come what we call a subcutaneous injection, which you put it in for a pen. Of course, there's convenience to that, but they've got more patents around that, so they're going to switch patients over, and they're going to switch. At least our goal is, and this is all. If you're listening to earnings calls or these investor calls, they talk about this very openly.
Yeah.
That we're going to shift 40 to 50% of the market to this newer form, and it'll be under patent, and we'll have a re-monopoly again, because the main patent is supposed to come off in 2028.
Yeah.
But they won't just give up their existing drug either. They'll play that out in the courts, litigate it for as long as possible until they can get as many patients over to the subcutaneous form. And so this is all crafted out as a plan, like 5 years to 6 years ahead of plan. And so they've got their patents lined up. So this is why we monitor what's going on at the patent level, because it gives you a sense of the roadmap they're using to switch patients, to get new products, what they call new products, reformulation, all these other things. And so that's why what we try to do is at least bring some light to that, so that people can understand what the companies like to use, this wonderful term, which is so nebulous, innovation. I think we have to question that more than ever, because no one's denying that we don't want drug companies to do the research, do the development, because obviously people benefit from that. No one's denying. But to exploit the system the way they exploit it under the ruse of like, oh, we've invented something or we've innovated, half of it isn't.
Yeah.
Half of it is marketing, it's strategy, it's. But the thing is, to question that is almost you almost feel like a pariah.
Yeah.
Because anybody dare question innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's so interesting. I never thought about it that way before, because, we went to the Senate hearing when the CEO from Novo Nordisk came to testify, right? And that was one of the things they kept going back to is, oh, no, like we just want the rest of the world to help pay for innovation too. And they kept kind of sticking on this idea of it. And I was like, wait a minute, how are we paying for it? Like, how does that all come to being? Like, how does that connect? Because I am hearing that narrative, right? Is that the reason they charge us so much is because we are the richest country in the world and we can afford it, and we are paying for their studies and trials.
And they also like put it back on like American, like the insurance, like, well,
Yes.
we'll lower this, but
PBMs are the problem.
PBMs are the finger pointing, right?
Well, that's what's happening at the moment in terms of the policy space. I mean, you've got the pharmaceutical companies who start the problem. If you think about it as where does a problem start? I always say, where does the problem start?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Like
somebody
the
once
egg,
said,
right?
Yeah.
Right. Somebody once explained it to me in a very crude manner, and I hope you forgive me for kind of just illustrating it in this way. It's like if you have a river and you have a dead body, where does the dead body start? And they start gathering at the bottom. Do you try and address it at the bottom, or do you address it at the top?
Right. Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of our policies address things at the bottom of the river. By the time it's too late, the symptoms, if you might say.
Yeah.
We're
kind
not
of like our disease.
we're not dealing with the root causes.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of focus is on the PBMs, the pharmaceutical benefit managers, because even though they are a scourge on the health system here, no one's denying that they are part of the problem.
Yeah.
The real problem is who sets the price, who then negotiates with the PBM, who then gives back rebates, and they make a deal, and that's all non-transparent.
Yeah.
So yeah, sure, getting rid of the PBMs, that's good, or making it more transparent or stringent. But ultimately, the companies are still setting the price.
Yeah.
And as long as they can keep getting all these patents and keep actually holding onto a monopoly longer, they can set whatever price they want.
Yeah.
True.
So what about okay, help me understand, because Americans can be very American focused. I feel like you follow. All right. So it isn't lost on me. All my friends from other countries are like, you're so American. So just know it's there. So here's what I want to understand. So we've had other people from all over the world, on our show. And specifically when we had on Charlie, who is in the UK, and then Cloud Pharmacy, and they were talking about specifically around the cost of this medication, similar to what US dollars would be. And they said between, I think it was 100 and 150 for a Mounjaro quickie pen. And I was like, well, who negotiated the price with the company? And they were like, there's no negotiation. The price is the price. And I'm like, no, wait, what? How is that a thing? Oh, wait, can you hear the thunder? It's literally shaking my house. And it
came from my house to yours now.
Oh my God. It's so crazy. But I'm wondering about that. So when it comes down to at the end of the day, and like you said, there's not transparency. So clearly it's, hidden. But when it comes to these patents and the way they work, is this very much US focused? And with approvals for an FDA, which is federal for us, right? And then how do those things come together? Because I don't know.
Yeah, no, a lot of countries now have patents. The US market is the biggest market for most of the drug companies, whether they're European drug companies or US-based drug companies. And so when you look at their revenue earnings and if you break it down by region, the US is where they make their most profit. And that's largely because of this idea of a free market.
Yes.
Because there's no negotiation. So they can do whatever they like, other than Medicare now, where you have that small slither of drugs that do get negotiated. And that's just recent. And so in other countries, they have to deal with the government agencies. I don't know. Certainly, I know, for example, in England, in the UK, there's an agency called NICE, NICE, which negotiates all drug prices on behalf.
What does it stand for? NICE. What does it stand for?
I don't remember what they stand for.
I feel like if it was a Canadian company, it would totally be called NICE.
Yeah. And so they do negotiate. And then that's what gets set as the price. But here, because there isn't that, so the companies can do pretty much whatever they like, and because of the insurance system and so forth, insurance pays it, and so that just accumulates. And but the other problem is in Europe, at least, the patenting system is pretty universal in that sense. It's a lot of similar sort of standards. They still have lots of patents in Europe too, but they don't get as many as they do here, because the US patent system, there's a thing what we call, and I'm not going to get into the weeds about it, but to say it more broadly is, you can keep filing the same patent at the US Patent and Trademark Office. The examiner might reject it, but you can refile it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And so, but what happens is you end up kind of breaking out one patent into several. So we call the parent patent, and you get all these children of the parent patent. And so each one becomes an individual right. To do that in Europe is much harder, because there's not such a procedure to do that so often or as easily. And so that's one of the big differences, so that when you go into litigation, instead of facing 5 patents or 6 patents or 10 patents even in Europe to litigate, here you end up facing 30 or 40 because of all the way the system allows you to do that. And that's one of the things that we've been trying to get Congress to realize is by allowing these various procedural things that you have unique to the US patent system, you're allowing companies to have all these accumulation of what we call the thicket. It's easier to develop a thicket of patents in the US than it is in other countries. And so that then is why you see generics enter, on average, by our estimations, by our work, at least anywhere 4 to 6 years earlier.
Okay.
Like, how many lives could that save?
How many lives? I mean, think about it in so many different ways. I mean, I'm just listening to your stories. I was on background, and I think about all the stress that comes with that.
Absolutely.
The lives, there's so many factors in there that we don't even talk about. And this is the thing I think. What really bothers me is people talk about, people, obviously there's the lives. It's the stress that leads to people losing their life.
Yes, absolutely.
No doubt about that.
Right? We don't look at that. Look at what it does to us inside. We don't even talk about it. I know it's hard to measure, but we don't even talk about that.
The cortisol, right? They just, like this, think about it.
I mean, for sure. And I think if we're thinking about just the bits of the disease, right? In it itself, it is progressive. And so, it's chronic, and the variety is up. Have you lost me?
Lost you a little bit.
Okay, I'm back.
If you're not back, I did want to, so in summary, I want to make sure that we get this for our whole audience, because I'm really nerding out very hard.
Okay.
So in summary, a thicket is just sort of like a reworking of baby parts of the patent, correct? Where
I think it could be it could be like one patent that's been splintered out into 20. Okay. It could also be other follow-on patents that you file, which is deemed to be different, but are just slight variations or slight called tweaks of the original patent. And there's so many different ways to make a thicket.
It feels like a tree. Yeah, like I'm looking at it like a tree. And
exactly. Okay. And there's so many different branches, and so many different ways. There's different types of patents. You have the process. You have the new indication. You have a new formulation. I'll file 6 or 7 different type of formulation patents, because what I'm also thinking about is, what is my competitor going to do? I want to block off any potential route that my competitor may take, even though I may never use that particular route. So what you do is you kind of set out all the what I call landmines early on, so that by the time the generic get in, think of it as that you're setting all the traps, so that when you get to litigation, I can get you into a situation where I say, okay, I can't litigate through this. I'll settle. I'll wait to come into the market 4 years later, which is what's happening in some ways with some of these drugs. And so that in that sense, there's almost like this then agreement. The generic decides to back off. In the previous days, they used to pay them off to not to come into the market. They call it pay for delay settlements. So that's the benefit of having a thicket of patents. It's a strategic thing. It's all driven for financial maximization.
But at what point is this considered egregious? That's what I like. It's not like I don't I am all about people being able to make as much money as they possibly can. But at what point is it considered egregious? At what point do we say, over half of our country is fucking dying. Sorry, God. Like, Dad, whatever. Like, I don't understand. Like, at some point, like, this is a real problem. Like, it's.
Well, and I'd like to talk about insulin, right?
Like,
Because that's a really
HIV.
good example.
Yes.
That's
Oh,
yeah.
great example. Yes.
Insulin is a really good example of people losing their lives, right? Or it's something that people need. And I did some research on insulin when I was making that blog up about how you had written this amazing report. And I would love for you to tell us what it was that i-MAK did to make a difference for insulin, or to help make a
Yes.
difference there.
I mean, not to sound modest, or what we did was we just showed what companies like, for example, we did one report that Sanofi, Lantus, the product Lantus, how they were using the patents to kind of keep competitors from coming in. We actually worked with T1 International, which is a great organization of people living with type 1 diabetes, and they did a lot of advocacy around. But what we did was to arm patients with the information so they could advocate and really start putting pressure. That thankfully led to a lot of Congress to kind of start really seeing the problem, and why we got at least some way towards a better situation, with the $35 cap and stuff, because of the buildup. But we actually showed how, for example, Lantus, because of their extra 5 years of patent, they made an extra $14 billion because of that.
Wow.
Instead of having competition in 2015, 16, they were able to push it off. They use all these anti-competitive strategies, which are now being played out in court after the event. This is always after the event. This is the problem.
Yeah.
It's always after the event that we start to try and redeem ourselves. And our goal, what we're trying to do, is trying to show people before it happens, like with Keytruda, like with GLPs. We're saying, look, this is all happening right in front of us, and in broad daylight. Why can't we address these at much earlier? And that's the challenge, and that's what we're trying to get more and more people in Congress, and really all of you to really stand up and say, we know what's going on in terms of the patent system, and not buy into the narratives that they want you to believe that, we won't get new drugs if we did something different.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I hear it. Like, do you hear? Like, I hear it out there. People will say, like, there's no way they're going to lower the price of these. They lose too much money. And I'm like, I don't think this company's lost money in like a bazillion years. Like, any of them. Like, I don't think lose money is actually something. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe lose potential like revenue for futures, but the way the language is almost like if we're talking about, a business that's down the street losing money. It's not the same thing. This is different. We're talking about billions here, right? If not trillions, right? Like, we're talking about tremendous amount of money. This is not. And y'all know, in terms of politically, I'm pretty much down the middle. Like, it just sort of depends on where I go. But I really do think that we have to figure out and have to have some sort of definition as a society of what is considered too much. Like, what is considered, we've got to figure that out, because it's just going to be to our detriment. It's just like you said, like, it's going to be the have and the have nots, and we're already there, and just going to put your ass down the toilet right with AI, like, it's not good. Sorry.
Well, and think about it, to the arguments that they will make, that the industry makes, that we get this pushback all the time, and I'm sure you've heard enough of it. Oh, if we don't have this revenue, if we don't have this money, we can't reinvest in the R&D.
More, yeah.
Well, if we look at the evidence, and in our report that Amanda is familiar with, we show Novo Nordisk spent more money from its revenue on share buybacks, buying back shares and dividends for its shareholders, than actually on R&D.
So let's explain what that is for our audience so they can understand what that means.
Right. So typically, the arguments that, well, I make money, I reinvest in the R&D. That is the model of the pharmaceutical industry.
Research and development.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Right.
That's why we give them these incentives and everything else. These 5 years over here and these 20 years over here. But instead, as the bulk, almost over half of the revenue is going back to buying shares to increase the stock of the company, so that the shareholders get their payoff, and that money could have been used in R&D, but it's not.
Right.
So the more money they're making is not necessarily going into the R&D as they claim. and that's their justification for all the prices they charge and all these other things.
Yeah.
But it's not
Oh,
playing out.
and the scary Alzheimer's thing is the newest thing, right? Like, oh, but if we don't do this, you guys won't have money for Alzheimer's research to figure out how these medications can possibly help with that. And that is, they have made a clear distinction of how that is devastating our country financially, like, and where that's going. And so I think that, like, that's what I'm hearing. And I think that it plays into, just like you said, like what people are thinking about what's considered safe and good, right? And nobody wants to, we've seen how bad that is. Nobody wants to die that way. I always started to figure out what platform on if I could say die or not, because on all the other platforms you have to say unalive, which is just ridiculous, but whatever. But like, I think that that's it. It's very much. I mean, I hear the politicians. I don't know if it's working, if they're hearing it, because I hear them talking to the drug companies almost like, I'm just gonna be honest, like almost like a king, like the kind of bow down. Like this was the first time
Yeah.
I'd ever seen, and even like Bernie, and we all love Bernie, but in Bernie's heart and all, but like ultimately even Bernie was like, I love your country. Like we were right there, and he was just like, it's wonderful. I'm an independent. And I was just like, Bernie, this is not the time. You know what I mean? Like, but I understand, like everybody's afraid of these things, of these sicknesses and these illnesses. And we know that possibly, or at least that's what we're told, that the solution are these drugs or the next drugs or whatever it is. So in a way, there's like this weird power play. And I also feel like it definitely gets really tied up in like our government. And I don't think anybody trusts our government because we all think that they're making money from the pharmaceutical companies. And so it's like, I feel like it's just been the perfect storm of just like what you said, it's all the bodies at the end of the stream, you know? And like, I just would love to know, like, what can we do about it? Because like I work in marketing for cybersecurity. And so I always talk about all these like doomsday things, but ultimately at the end of whatever we're presenting on, I like to be like, but here's what we can do, right? And here's where we can get involved. And here's some control we do have. Do you have any direction for our audience on that?
Yeah, I think first of all is one of the things we like to say is write to your representatives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Say and share, even whether it be our information or other information. Say, why are drug companies allowed to repatent so many things and just ask the question and bring their attention to it and say, look, we've read about this and we're actually, we think that this is a problem. And so in that way, that's one way we can actually get people. One, it shows people are informed. And two, you're kind of bringing light to their attention, because a lot of people in Congress don't even know this stuff's happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's, and that's, it's just natural. There's so much stuff that they have to deal with. But bringing their to attention, one, it raises the issue. Two, it puts more pressure to talk about it, get it on the floor in one of their houses. So that's actually one way to do it. And
I have a question. So for the listeners who are currently having issues affording their medication, could you share any hope coming down the pipeline? Any information you might have about, affordability on the horizon?
So I don't know if this is. I know we heard a lot of stories, for example, and it's been quite a common story, I think, in North America, where people cross over to Canada or go to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been speaking with some folk. Actually, was speaking to someone from the New York Times who was investigating the story, and I've spoken with some lawyers, and something we've been tracking as well. So interesting, there's a development that's kind of going on in the legal sort of space under the surface, where Novo Nordisk did not renew their patent in Canada.
What?
Really?
Yeah. So this way I told you, where in the US, because the patent's supposed to run off in 26, the main one.
Yeah.
But because they got that 5-year extension, which the law allows, the Hatch-Waxman law allows.
Yeah.
In Canada, they have a similar thing, but the patent was supposed to run off in 2028. But they didn't renew it. Somebody didn't pay the renewal.
Oh my God.
Oh,
And so Sandoz is positioning itself. Sandoz is a generic company.
Yeah.
Is positioning itself to launch as soon as they can. And there may be some legal kerfuffles.
Right.
But it's going to be way before 2031, 32 in the US.
Oh my God.
So there's a possibility that Canada And I don't know if this is helpful because I
Interesting you say that, because I had just heard in the news that the state of Florida had essentially asked the FDA if they could import this medication from Canada. And I was like, how messed up is this that they have to purchase this medication through Canada, even though they're buying it from the same place because they get it for a lower price. But this opens more doors,
It does.
right?
Yeah, because that was
Yeah.
it's something to keep tabs on. I'm happy to keep sharing information because I was just actually, as I was saying, I was speaking to a journalist who had been, some people in these kind of in our legal wonky world, we were all talking about this.
Sure.
And we were tracking it. And so, because there are other countries, like there's a case going on in India now where the main patent, the one I'm talking about, is supposed to come off in 26 too, because they didn't give these extensions like they do here in the US. There's legal battles already brewing there. So it's going to be interesting to see if Sandoz can come to market 2 years earlier.
Yeah.
Next year. And
That would set
everything
precedent for sure.
Everything kind of points to it probably will happen.
Yeah.
So that is a more kind of what I call realistic sort of optimism in terms of because of this ball that was dropped. Who knows? And who cares?
Who cares? Yeah.
Right? I mean, who cares? So if Sandoz is able to kind of if Novo doesn't throw up some other patents that they may have in Canada as a barrier, which they will have, but maybe they're not as strong, and so that they can bypass them. We could see in Canada, right on our doorstep, earlier.
Wow.
Wegovy, Semaglutide.
Amazing.
Gosh,
but in terms of the US, I wish I could offer something much more concrete.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is what Amanda was saying, which is that we could buy from there. Like,
potentially.
right?
I mean,
potentially, yeah.
If Florida is able to work it out with Canada, because of course they want to make sure that they have to supply for their own country.
Yeah.
It could open the door for other states to do the same thing. And that would just be for state-run healthcare. But if Medicaid, even in one state, is doing this, it could change things for other healthcare systems. We don't know. It'd be really interesting to find out.
And I don't know if Florida is only going to buy from the branded, as in like these Novo, but if generics become available, they'll drop the price even more.
Absolutely.
Right.
It would.
It would drop it even more because there's other products on the market. So, hopefully, and we have worked with. I say worked. We do speak with people at Sandoz, their legal team, because we're trying to talk about policies and things that they should be doing to try and push these issues, and they're very much on board. Their CEO I've spoken with, and he's very much trying to break the market in certain ways.
Sure.
So it's great, and I think it's good to see somebody that is looking at all the, because obviously they're in it for the money too. But the thing is, though, at least it's going to be considerably cheaper and accessible, and that's what we're trying to do here is get more competition in the marketplace.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, like ultimately this whole, these auto injector pens were, they were like brilliant, but they were also like stupid. Like, because it's like brilliant because you could patent all the pieces and all the land, right? But stupid in that, like, they are not easy to make. And it did cause issues with shortage, which allowed this door for compounding. But I also feel like, thank God, because there are so many people whose lives have been changed, if not saved, because they had access to compound medication. And, obviously we have less and less, I think, of reliable sources for that since the shortage is considered officially over,
Yeah, and there's legal battles going on around that still.
Yeah,
so
still.
It doesn't help you because it's going to be less and less available. And so, it's hopefully next year we might see Canada have at least versions.
Wow.
Interesting. I hope
I know that seems a long way away still, but it's much
a little bit of hope, right?
Yeah, it's much closer than what I can't see. I can't foresee anything happening in the US because whoever was in litigation, at least for Ozempic and at least for Ozempic, they've settled. They've settled, and they won't come into market until 2031 or 2, unless a new competitor tries to challenge these patents. And gets an earlier settlement date, but chances are not because of all the patents they've got.
Wow. Oh, gosh.
Let me ask you. So, Trump signed an executive order, something called the Most Favored Nation pricing, to try to bring our prices in line with other, wealthy countries. Was that a real policy or just politics? And do you think anything like that could actually happen under any administration?
It's a great question. It's funny, we were talking about this with my team for the last few days. I think, I'm sad to say, I think it's more politics. The only reason I say that is because, and this is not me just saying it, this is a lot of people saying, well, on the surface, it sounds good.
Mm.
Who wouldn't want to bring these prices in alignment with, like, for example,
Right.
let's say instead of paying $500, you end up paying $200, the 3 times difference, or whatever it is. But there's no real guideline if you look at the executive order, how is he going to achieve that?
Right.
There's no real structure to it. There's no real. The other issue is if you think about it, and I've probably been in this business, and I'm sure as people who take these drugs have your own cynicism maybe around the way the system works, but having been in the legal system and the politics of it all and what have you, the ultimate beneficiary of this will be the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason I say that is because attached to that most favored nation thing, there's another part of the executive order is what they want is that the argument is that other countries aren't paying for the R&D.
Mm-hmm.
So they should increase their prices. And so,
Oh
for example, if I have a drug that is $200 in the UK, you should be paying $400 or $350 or whatever it might be.
Right.
And sure, for the American person, that might come down.
Yeah.
But overall, the drug company is going to make much more money.
Because they're going to spread it out.
Spread it out.
They'll increase prices other places.
What they're doing is that, in a way, despite what the drug companies say when this was announced, like, oh, this is crazy, it's going to hurt the free market and it's socialist pricing.
Yeah.
They're very good at pretending that they're in pain, but they're not. They've got a different. I mean, even, the head of Novartis and other companies in Europe are saying you guys should be paying more. And so I always have this gut instinct that this is not good. You gotta. They're playing 4D chess.
Yeah.
You've got to play 4D chess too.
Yeah.
And having been in the world of strategy and what have you, because once they get it set, think about it this way. Once you set that and you set that as the mark everywhere, and there's political pressure, the US will put political pressure on other countries to say you must do this, whether it be tariffs, whether it be anything else. That's how trade works. So then the rest of the world moves more in lockstep with where the US system works.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I didn't think of
and
that.
that is how it happened in the 80s, in the 90s. These laws that were passed to make other countries bring in patent laws that they previously didn't have was because of the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, I'm just finishing a book that speaks about this.
Wow.
You need to get the book.
And so we have to understand what really would be a good policy is. And this is not being a criticizing American healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
But what we should be doing is, no, the pharmaceutical companies should be lowering their prices anyway because they're making enough money. Why don't we start from that point?
More than enough, yes. Okay.
Why don't we start from that point instead of saying, no, we need to give them more somewhere else? The problem starts here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seems like with the way it's built, we would be ruining it for everybody else, right?
Well, that's what politics aside, I think every side on this is being wrong.
Yeah.
Right. For sure. Yeah. Nobody's got this figured out, man. Yeah.
They've all got it wrong on this.
Yeah. For sure.
They've all put similar policy. So, maybe a few people try to fight it. But the thing is, at the end of the day, what we should be saying is actually we need to be reducing the way the companies have this monopoly power.
Yeah.
That's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
So that Americans get cheaper.
We have other laws that reduce monopolies, so why would we not do that for this?
Yeah.
right? But because of this narrative that the industry has built over the years since the 60s,
Right.
that we won't have new drugs, we won't have
We'll have
R&D,
innovation. We won't cure
all
Alzheimer's.
that stuff,
Right?
all these buzzwords that
Yeah.
that creates fear.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, if you look at the trajectory of their revenue growth and everything else,
Mhm.
it's gone astronomical.
Yeah.
Because we keep. It's like I always say, it's like a spoiled child. We keep giving it more candy. Every time it has a tantrum, we give it more candy.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to deal with it.
This is crazy. Like I knew it was straight trash, but like this is insane. The layers and layers of this just blow my mind. Here's my whole thing of what I think that he is saying, and I've always said this, like with them, like they use the narrative with this coupon card. We had no idea that this medicine was going to go viral on the internet. We had no idea that we were going to have a short. That's bullshit. There's no way. Like that's not. There's no way that's true. They've been playing 4D chess, just like you're saying. Like they knew exactly what they didn't know about the internet. They didn't know about social media. They didn't know about 40% of America was fat. Like, are you kidding me? Like, of course we're going to talk about it on the internet. That's all we do is run our mouths here. So, clearly, right? I mean, like there's no way that was going to happen. There's no way that they didn't foresee this, right? And then they changed the coupon card, right? And people couldn't get it unless you had type 2. So we had this coupon card. We all get hooked, right? We're all like, oh my God, like, I can't believe this is like, feels almost like a cure to us because we've been so sick so long. Yeah. And then this happens. Like, I feel like somebody's got to show, like, nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about this weird coupon card advertising thing they did. And I think it's because it's a loophole. Like there's so many loopholes and they're just exploiting them, and we're all just dying.
Yeah, they have so many tools in the box that there's all sorts of strategies that they develop to try and find those loopholes, whether it be the patent system, whether it be some regulatory issue, whether it be the coupon, whether it be the way they deal with the PBMs. They are literally looking to find a gap in every. It's unfortunately, it's the way the market has developed and this incentive to keep driving revenue at any cost. I mean, it's at the cost of patients, the cost of Americans. It's
cost of the world. I mean, sure.
It's a world. Yeah, I mean, it is a world problem. It's a world problem.
It's a world problem. It's way beyond partisan. This is a world problem. Like I think that it's easy for us because I think it's especially in America, but like we're kind of survivalist, right? Like we're very much like, kind of very much laser focused on us and what we need. And I can't worry about those other people. And I'm American. I for sure have done that before. But I think like at some point we have to go, but again, like what I was saying before, at what point is it egregious? At what point do we all stand together and go, this is bullshit? And I think that we have to do that. It makes me uncomfortable. Like I'm literally afraid, like saying these things, like I'm worried.
Yeah, I'm afraid
but I feel like it's important.
It is very important.
I think Amanda, you'd started a petition, if I'm not incorrect, right?
Yeah, it all started with a petition.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I think the power you guys have is immense if you can really sort of rally together, because I think our work is really just to, like I said, we don't do anything special other than doing all the wonky stuff. You guys are the ones. I mean, this is my experience of working in fields of access medicines and what have you. We worked with HIV patients who were at the fore.
Right.
Yeah.
In India, we went with patients. They went to the patent office and said, "Look, I'm a person living with HIV. You granting patents is killing me."
Yeah.
It was powerful.
That's powerful.
It was powerful because an examiner has never sat face to face with somebody who needs and breaking that kind of barrier.
Yeah.
Is what's needed. Is we need to have people such as yourselves, people who need these medicines.
Yeah.
In these places, like when you were at Congress and you're testifying or you're speaking.
Oh, I wasn't doing either one. I just showed up. Like I didn't know what to do. I just showed up.
But we see it sporadically. We'll see somebody at a testimony, a hearing, and it's powerful, right? We all hear the story, but then it goes into the background.
Yes. Absolutely.
We need to be
I
you need to be in the foreground all the time, which obviously you are. You're doing so much work and stuff. But in these places where these policies which affect you, which are
Yes.
so sort of opaque and hidden,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I
you know,
never
who
thought
would
about
think,
the patenting office.
I hadn't
who would
either.
think going to the patent office and
New
saying,
petition.
It was genius.
Yes.
Actually, I'm not sure if you know, but we've got a planned trip for Washington, D.C. in the last week of October to go protest and hold our signs and wear our matching T-shirts and, share our stories on the megaphone about how GLP-1s have changed our lives and we need affordable access.
Yeah.
I think there's other patient groups as well who would want to do this.
Yeah,
Oh God,
absolutely.
please, yes. And
Let's
I was
break
looking
it.
into it. I don't think there's another organization or large group of people who have stood up like that for obesity specifically. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know of any historical context where a large group of people suffering from obesity came together and said, we need X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
protested in Washington, D.C. I can't think of anything that's happened for obesity specifically like that.
There's a group called P4AD, who I made Patients for Affordable Drugs.
Mm.
They do a lot of. They don't take any money from the pharmaceutical industry or what have you, and
Yeah.
they do great advocacy for patients living with all types of conditions.
That's great.
You know, certainly they do a lot of advocacy around the patent system. You know, they're trying to
Yeah.
bring that to the fore. I think there's something here that could be built.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With getting these groups together and really, bringing light to saying that actually, yeah, there are probably several problems with the system.
Well, nobody wants to be held accountable. And everybody wants to be like, I'm just doing my job. I'm just, again, this is very like, I'm just doing what I'm told to do. I'm just this, but ultimately, like, there is a tremendous amount of accountability around these things. And I think that it's like, I don't know, like I don't have any problem like with ignorance. Like this sounds awful, but like I don't, because ignorance just means not informed, right? But once you are informed, I think that's when you have to do something, right? And I it's willful ignorance that I struggle with, but ultimately, like I feel like there's so much information about this now. I mean, it's why our podcast is free, I mean, we have sponsors and things like that, but we ain't rolling in it or anything like that, and like we don't get me wrong, I have said to people before, I would take money for big pharma. I won't now, like because now I feel like I'm taking the problem from the guys at the top with the like, and letting the bodies float on the river, like
I think it'd be amazing because there's something powerful having, and I've seen it happen in other countries where people living with things and who are informed and gone and said, and I think it puts more pressure on Congress when they see that.
Right,
Agreed.
for sure. Yeah.
I feel like this is the perfect place for gray market. Like the people that are gray market, black market, research grade, getting it overseas from China, mixing it in their kitchen. And we've covered this a lot on the podcast recently. They're only doing it because they're driven to it. They're only doing it because they're sick people that need medicine. Like they want to pay $25 copay like everybody else, or $100 or whatever it is, and be able to live. Like ultimately, they're only doing it because they're desperate and they've been driven there. And that would be perfect for those people to say, because of you, let me tell you what I have to do every month. Let me tell you what I have to go through, right? And the risk that I have to take on my life and the suffering I'm having to go through literally needlessly because of your patent system. What are you going to do about it? Right? Like, what are you going to do about it? And it's not like we have to be cruel. It's peaceable, right? Like, I think that but there is a certain level of, I think, visibility that this needs. And, I don't know much about it, but if you can help us learn, that would be great.
Oh, we are all. This is our job. This is our small contribution. You guys are at the forefront. You're the forefront. You're the front line.
Okay.
We can supply you with information and
So we need
help you. Because that was what we learned working in different countries. Was at the end of the day, it's not about lawyers and what have you. It's about the patients, about the people who need the medicines, and the more powerful they are in their advocacy, like type 1 diabetes, the T1 International were fighting for their insulin. I think it's so powerful to see patients in action, demand and know the policies that are actually harming them.
Yeah,
it's the ultimate
very
kind
empowering.
of, it's very empowering, and it empowers us because it makes us feel like we want to provide as much as possible. But at the end of the day, you are the people who can change this.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
agree. The large masses of people, and I feel like a good metaphor would be warriors going to battle and you arming us with the knowledge to be able to fight that battle. So
Whatever we can supply you, you know,
Yeah.
and you are the ones who will lead it.
Yeah. So tell us more about what we can do next outside of the next steps that we're going to have here for our guests or for our listeners, and tell us where they can find you or how they can get involved with your organization.
Yeah, I think the main thing you can do, which is write to your representatives, make them aware of the issue of patents and how it's actually causing high drug prices or leading to high drug prices. And I think also writing to the US Patent and Trademark Office to say, hey, I've read about this. Why are there so many patents on these drugs?
Yeah.
Have a conversation, interact with them. I mean, they are a public office, and so you have every right to engage them. And you can support your information or that you need to do this kind of letter writing or what have you, and we're always accessible. You can find us at www.i-mak.org. My email is Tahir, Tahir, at i-mak.org. Happy to field any questions you have, any support that you need. We've got a lot of data, a lot of information. It's all available on our website. And we're happy to support wherever it is that you need in terms of the information you require.
Great. And then we can put the link to the report so people can download it too in the show notes.
Absolutely. There's a web-based format, and also it's in PDF too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important, like, as we're moving forward, I think ultimately, no matter what, in terms of, y'all know, like, in terms of this podcast, I don't care. I don't give a shit how you vote. I'm sorry, that sounds bad, but I don't care. Like, you vote you. I'm fine with that. But this podcast is meant to represent you with someone with obesity and you as an American in general. So I think that we can all agree that ultimately right now things are getting broken down to the studs a little bit. So ultimately it's the perfect time for us to start having these conversations and pushing the envelope if we want to protect our children and our children's children, because that's where this is going. That's where we're at. That's where we're at across the world. So let's take those steps, right? Like, I know it's not comfortable, but if we do it together, it won't feel as uncomfortable and it'll feel empowering. So more on what's coming next. But for now, just know that you're not alone. It's not your fault. We love you so much. And I'm such a big baby. And I'll put all this information in the show notes and I'll see you next week. Okay? All right. Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.